So let us now drill a bit deeper on the topic of green recovery and building back better. And we hear from a financial institution with a key role. It's a pleasure to welcome the Managing Director of the European Investment Bank, Wilhelm Molterer. Very nice to have you with us. So, during the panel a little bit earlier with our two European Union presidents and also Vice President Timmermans, we heard some big numbers when it comes to financing green recovery in Europe, but clearly it is absolutely crucial to put those funds to work soon so that they really create change on the ground. Now, how can the EIB help make that happen?
First of all, hello everybody. Arnie, long time no seen. Second, it's your bank, what we are talking about. It's the European Investment Bank, the Bank of the European Union. What's the mission? It's simply to turn visions into reality and translate targets into investment. That's EIB. And we have a clear mission statement currently put in place. First of all, 100% of EIB's business, which is incentivizing roughly 200 billion investment a year, is to be Paris-aligned from 2021 onwards. Second, we have made a clear decision. 50% of the total volume of EIB has to be climate-related, towards climate adaptation and climate mitigation. And third, our target is to make $1 trillion investment in the next 10 years, 2020 to 2030, climate-related. What's necessary to do? You have, and this is not too much discussed today currently, we have to integrate private money and give the private money the right direction. And that's what we are currently practically doing, all thanks to EFSI, which I am the managing director of. You can also may know it as Juncker Plan. We have 33 billion guarantee, and we translate this into at least 500, maybe 550 billion investment. Means the best use of public money by integrating and incentivizing private money and turn this in the right direction. And out of this 500 plus, we are keen to have 40% of this already climate-oriented. And the clear target setting by Ursula von der Leyen gives an orientation where to go. And that's our mission.
Let me ask you to bring it home to Austria, as it were, because we have important Austrian leaders here with us, not only at the federal level, but also state and local. So perhaps you can just share what you think is most important for Austria to participate effectively in the Green Recovery Plan.
Well, first of all, member states are not always happy to listen to advices. Therefore, I translate this into, I would say, my experience. First, a clear target. A clear target. Second, set the priorities right. Which means if you want to achieve the targets, the priorities for me are clear. It's sustainable transport, it's green energy, it's sustainable industry, it's sustainable housing and building, and you have also to incentivize investment into RDI, digitalization, and startups. Because startups are the driver, and there's a huge opportunity also economically. In my very personal experience in some member states, you have always a blocking thing. And the blocking thing is the either or. You are saying either you should be competitive or sustainable. That's crazy nonsense. You have to skip the either or and replace it by the end. You are competitive via sustainable development and not the other way around. And I think this is the real critical thing. And last but not least, give the public money and also the private money the right orientation to put it in the right basket for investing. Not creating stranded investments and make it really an economic success. Then you're on the right track.
Very good. Thank you so much. Wilhelm Molterer from the European Union's investment bank. And let us now take it, in fact, to a different governmental level here in Austria and talk about the green recovery and building back better with Austria's Federal Minister for Climate Protection, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. A very big portfolio there, Leonore Gewessler. You are in fact Austria's first ever Green Party Minister for Mobility and Climate Action. So what for you are the absolute key projects to boost sustainability?
There's a lot to say about that because it's a big question, and at the same time we see that we are in a time of emergency. We are in a time where we need to go beyond the either or to now and everything now. So that's what we're trying to do in Austria, and that's what we successfully did in Austria with the recovery packages, because I think this moment in time is indeed crucial. It's the moment that we get it right, that we put tracks into the future, and that's what we need to do now. So that's what we did with the €2 billion recovery package, and I'm responsible for infrastructure also. And why is infrastructure so important? It determines our emissions, not just for days or weeks, but for years, decades, and maybe even centuries, if you look at this room. So that's why we put money into retrofitting houses, €650 million into retrofitting houses. That's why we have the highest ever investment in train infrastructure. And I think there's one aspect that I want to highlight. Because one thing is to say we invest into the future. But I think it's crucial. It's crucial that we stop investing in the past. And that's what we did here. That's what we did in the investment premium that we designed for companies. We excluded investments in fossil infrastructure. And that's the way to go, and I hope that can be an example. On the one hand, we need to invest into the future, but we also need to stop investing in the past, because we need to put our money where our words are, and that's what we're trying to do in Austria.
Arnold Schwarzenegger reminded us earlier, yesterday is a very bad investment. So we've talked a lot about climate action and the need for ambitious goals and targets. What are your main goals for the next 4 years, quite concretely?
So yes, we have very ambitious targets. Austria wants to be climate neutral by 2040. And we've pledged that we produce all our electricity 100% renewable by 2030. So that's big goals. But it's important also here that very concretely, like Franz Timmermans say, one piece at a time, we put it into legislations, we put it into programs, and we get it on the ground to actually be effective. So yesterday, only yesterday, I'm very happy about that, because it's very big news for Austria. We brought to public consultation our new Renewable Energy Deployment Act. So that will be the key piece of legislation for reaching 100% renewable electricity by 2030. We're working hard on a tax reform to make actually our tax system a lever for environmental protection, for climate action. CO2 pricing in Austria to be introduced in 2022. There is one sector which many of us in many countries probably gives us a headache. It's the mobility sector. It's a key challenge, how to decarbonize that sector. So we're working on a lot of projects there. One of them, one very dear to my heart, a flat rate ticket for all public transport in Austria at the equivalent of €3 a day. So it's called a 1, 2, 3 tickets. It will have 3 different stages. For one region, for 2 regions, and for the whole country. But flat rate, easy to use, cheap public transportation for people. And let me mention one more thing, because President Chaputova said it earlier. Climate action, of course, doesn't end at our borders. We have an international responsibility. We have a responsibility as developed nations. And some of you might know that I've been a climate action campaigner for many years, also before I became a minister. And so it was very dear to my heart, and President van der Bellen mentioned it, that we increased our contribution to the Green Climate Fund only this week, a 5-fold increase for the next period of the Green Climate Fund, because I think that's also part of what climate action needs to be for developed nations. One very last remark, because Franz Timmermans mentioned it, I want to applaud the European Commission for the courage and the boldness for the at least 55% target, and I can pledge from this stage we will do everything from Austria to make sure we have an ambitious at least 55% target in the European Union, because we need to lead the way. That's our chance, that's our big chance for the future, and the time to do it is now.
Thank you very, very much, Minister Gewessler, for that inspiring message.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Gewessler, and also Mr. Molterer for the great talk. And of course, I love the message of Minister Gewessler, don't invest in the past, invest in the future. And this is exactly where the action should be. And of course, Mr. Maltra was also fantastic with his speech. And I'm gonna do a little test with all of you later on to see what your comprehension was of all the facts that he mentioned, just to make sure that you stay awake when those very important speeches are happening, okay? Anyway, the next thing that we're gonna see is another interview. Not that I'm a journalist or anything like this, and this is not my forte to do interviews, but I just did another interview, and that is with another great friend of mine that I've known since 1976. And I'm talking now about John Kerry, who was the Secretary of State under President Obama, who I have worked with when I was governor on environmental issues, who was very helpful, very smart, is really heavily into the environment, and was actually one of the architects of COP21, of the agreement that made the whole world sign on to certain promises of reducing greenhouse gases. So let's go and see the interview I've done with Secretary of State John Kerry.
Thank you very much for doing this interview with us for our Austrian World Summit on Environment. We really appreciate that. And I think that we would not have had a successful event if we wouldn't have had the interview with you, because you were the architect of COP21, which was the successful one where all the world came together and signed this agreement where they're going to reduce greenhouse gases and all that. And so I think that you worked your butt off on that for years and years and years. And we, of course, have been friends since 1976. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but we always got along.
Always we're friends. We're always friends.
Sharing ideas. So thank you very much, my dear friend.
Thank you.
I just want to first start out, John, by just saying, is it disappointing for you that COP21 has not yet come through with its promises? Because now when we look at the world, it looks like 70% of the countries have not really lived up to their promise. So what is your thinking about that, and where do we go from here?
Well, it's more than first of all, thank you, Arnold. Number one, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, number two, for your amazing leadership as governor of California. You did some extraordinary things and you helped to set the path. So thank you for that and for our friendship of many years. Look, it's worse than disappointing because it's a threat to the capacity of life to continue. It's a threat to sustainability on this planet. And the fact is, when we did Paris, we knew we were not able to get a mandatory reduction to hold the Earth's temperature to 2 degrees centigrade. We knew that. But we never expected the President of the United States, above all, to pull out of the agreement and to really give people license to go back to procrastination. So countries that we had really worked hard to bring to the table for Paris found a refuge in a way. And so the whole world has stepped back from the urgency. And if we did everything that was in the Paris Agreement today, Arnold, if we did, and we're not, we would still be at 3.7 degrees centigrade in terms of warming. The fact is, because we're not doing everything, we're heading to 4.1 to 4.5 degrees. So this is a moment of enormous urgency once again, and I hope you and all of us will seize this moment and do what has to be done. It happens to be an enormous economic opportunity, a benefit for health, jobs, millions of jobs to be created. There's no excuse for not doing what we know how to do, but we're just not willing to yet.
Well, John, when we went out of office, when I left the governorship, I started the USC Schwarzenegger Institute to continue on my work, and then the Austrian World Summit on Environment to continue my environmental work, because I didn't want to just stop with it because I'm not anymore governor. I think it's something that I became very passionate about. You did the same thing. When you got out of office, you started World War Zero, which is a world organization with the most powerful people involved. Tell me a little bit about why did you start that and what it really is, so that people understand that organization.
Well, World War Zero is named World War Zero because the whole world has to be engaged in this effort. It is a war because, frankly, the deniers and the procrastinators have declared war on science, war on facts, war on evidence. And the result is we're fighting just to establish a baseline of truth here about what is happening to us. And it is zero because that is the goal that the world's thoughtful, the scientists, the UN, others have adopted the notion that we must get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Sooner, really, I am convinced. So World War Zero is an effort to bring unlikely allies together. I mean, you described it in your introduction of me. A Republican governor, a Democrat Secretary of State and Senator, but both of us know there's no Republican or Democrat label on pollution. There's no Republican or Democrat label on what's happening in California today with the burning, what's happening with the melting of ice, the rising of the sea level, the extraordinary impact on crops, the movement of people who are now climate refugees. This is a global challenge. And so we felt that we had to bring new voices to the table, not just your traditional environmental group, but unlikely allies who can change the conversation.
And why was it so important to you to have, I remember when you called me to be part of this organization, that you were insisting on having a balance between Democrats, Republicans, decline to state, independents, and everyone on this team.
And what is ironic, and Europe is ahead of us on this. I mean, I know Frans Timmermans well. He's a terrific, articulate spokesperson for this. I know Europe as a whole is deeply committed to trying to move, but we're going to have to move faster than anybody thought. I saw that Angela Merkel made a decision on coal-fired power plants for Germany. They're going to phase them out. It is absolutely critical that country after country step up for when we go to Glasgow for the next UN meeting, which will take place because it was postponed this year. It will take place next year. Obviously, from my point of view, I hope we have a different president who wants to be in this agreement.
What impact do you think that COVID-19 made on our environmental movement?
Well, I think it scared the hell out of people, frankly, because they suddenly realized, wait a minute, pandemics were supposed to be part of the climate change scenario. And climate, the way in which the climate is changing is going to facilitate the movement of disease around the world. And it will complicate solving the problems of some viruses because of the warming. The heat will have an impact. So I think a lot of people realize that COVID-19 is in fact connected to climate change. And they also saw it in the response. I'll speak for my country, but when President Trump stood up and said that COVID and China's production of COVID was a Democrat hoax, I mean, he politicized it, and then he ignored it. And now we know from his interviews with Bob Woodward that he knew apparently that it was very, very, very dangerous, but he told something else to the American people. So people see in the denial, the same denial that you have in climate, a denial of science, a denial of evidence. And as a result, I think it has probably helped people with respect to the environmental discussion and the whole discussion about climate change.
Right. Now, to me, the most amazing thing is that here we have almost lost now, sadly, 1 million people because of COVID-19 this year. But with the environment, with the pollution, with the climate change, we are losing 7 million people a year. So, I mean, let's talk about that for a second here. I think that there has been a miscommunication by many people when they talk mostly about climate change which most people don't understand, but they do understand pollution. So to keep it in a simple way and to let people know, here's a picture of a town that is overpolluted and it's going to kill you eventually. So, I mean, I think that's a very important message. Let me ask you another thing, and that is, I think that we have relied so much on this UN agreements and everything on nations and on capitals. And as you know, and you and I have talked about this many times, I'm a fanatic about doing the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach.
Right.
And a lot of times in those discussions, they don't really weigh the importance of ordinary folks, of companies, of cities, of states, of provinces, and the subnational government, so to speak, also. And so what is your opinion about that, the importance of really having the bottom-down approach and the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach?
Well, it's essential, and it's also probably a lifesaver, because when President Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement, the next day I joined with Governor Jerry Brown and Governor Cuomo of New York and Governor Inslee of the state of Washington. We had a press conference in New York, and we announced the We're Still In movement, that we're going to stay in Paris. So here's what happened. 38 states in the United States have all passed renewable portfolio laws. So under the laws of those states, they have a mandatory target already to try to reduce. And in addition, over 1,000 mayors in America signed up to the Mayor's Conference to deal with climate. And so on city level, you're now seeing mayors changing the building codes for buildings, or dealing with recycling, or buying an electric fleet of vehicles for the community. I mean, there are all kinds of steps being taken at the state level, at the city level, and it allowed us to be able to say, yes, President Trump pulled out of the agreement, but wait a minute, the United States of America, the people I just described represent 80% of the population of America. They're still in the Paris Agreement. They care about it.
We are finished with the interview. I just want to ask you if you have one last message for all of our viewers that are watching online or that are live there at the Spanish Writing School right now attending the Austrian World Summit.
Well, again, thank you, Arnold, for the opportunity to be with you. Look, the whole world has got to stop and calm down and begin to pull together. There are forces that are trying to pull reasonableness and unity apart. And all of these forces that are pulling things apart will not benefit any of us in the future. You cannot solve climate crisis, nuclear weapons, cyber warfare, extremism, COVID, pandemics. You cannot solve them in any one nation alone. We have to cooperate. We have to work together.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Kerry, my dear friend, and I hope that you will say, I'll be back when it comes to next year's conference live.
Ich komme zurück next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
From the former U.S. Secretary of State who helped broker the Paris Climate Agreement, a very powerful reminder that we're all in this together. And that makes programs to support sustainability in the global South particularly important, because many of the world's most vulnerable people live there, and it is where climate change is hitting hardest. And that's what we hear now from Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate. She founded the Youth for Future Africa movement.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Nakate, and I'm a climate activist from Uganda. Last year, I started a strike to save the Congo rainforest because I had read about how much it is facing destruction. Over 80 million people depend on the existence of the Congo rainforest. These are literally the lungs of the African continent and also the lungs of the world. We need our forests. We need them protected. We need our ecosystems intact. We cannot watch destruction going on anymore. Use your platforms to talk about the Congo rainforest. Use your voice to speak about the Congo rainforest, because millions of people heavily depend on its existence. That is why I fight for it. The Congo rainforest matters. The people that live in it matter. So we have to fight for it. Save Congo rainforest. Thank you.